So today we are interviewing Paddy Magrane, who was born in the Middle East and educated in England. After a few years travelling, he moved back to London and was an artist, then copywriter and journalist, then became a writer. His latest book, Red Desert, is an Audible original out now, and he's also the director of Lime Crime Festival, which has gone on Lime this year. Woo!
That's correct. Good.
Okay, so our first question to kick it all off is, you've obviously had such a varied career. And at what point did you choose writing as your next step, and why?
I think it was because when I was an artist, I kind of put all this work into a painting. It could take absolutely ages, and then people would see it and go, I don't think they'd kind of take what they wanted from it. And I think, and it wasn't always what I wanted, what I intended. And I think there's something about writing whereby you can communicate much more clearly, and obviously people read what they want into books, but there's something about crime and thriller in particular where you can take people on a very specific journey and kind of sort of manipulate their emotions, or that hopefully manipulate their emotions and kind of increase their adrenaline and give them a level of intrigue, and it's kind of more, to be honest, it's more exciting. Crime thrillers are more exciting than painting pictures. And I think and gradually, not that I, instantly became a crime and thriller writer, but I think I was also kind of just more and more influenced by kind of books and films I was reading. It just kind of was a sort of natural transition, I think.
Mm-hmm. And was it always going to be crime for you, or did you play around with other genres before? I did
write a couple of sort of tortured literary books, and almost got an agent. In fact, I did get an agent, but they were just kind of, I just would hate to read them now. I just sort of feel that they kind of meander quite a lot. That's what I love about crime. And I mean, I know you guys kind of cover all genres. What I love about crime is that it's a very specific journey, and it's a really lovely distraction. And I think particularly right now, we obviously need loads of distractions. So it wasn't long before I realized, also, I'm not that kind of writer. I'm not that, and it's much more a love affair with language, I think, literary fiction. And that's not, I mean, hopefully the language is good, but it's the journey and the thrill that kind of interests me more, I think.
That's really interesting. So what do you think then makes a great crime novel? What are the key ingredients in it?
I mean, it's basically a really satisfying journey to be taken on, because you're presented with a mystery that's kind of basically insoluble at first. I mean, you've no idea where it's going. And then you're kind of fed these clues, and a really good crime novel will feed the clues in a way that that kind of, when you reach the end, you go, so that's it, as opposed to, I knew all that was coming. So I think it's the factor, wow, it was all there had I just kind of been a bit smarter. And I think the really, really interesting crime books now are books where the structure is maybe kind of really unusual, or the setting is really unusual. So, I mean, you might be, maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but there are a couple of crime writers who do that really beautifully.
I thought we were about to ask you that.
Excellent. There's an Australian novelist called Jane Harper.
Yes.
Who writes she writes really beautifully. I mean, it's not kind of like laboured, it's just beautifully, simply communicated. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's taking me to a place that don't really, I mean, no disrespect to the Australian viewers of this video, but I don't want to go to that outbacky place. I think probably a lot of Australians feel that. I mean, they're set in these kind of fiercely hot, unwelcoming communities in the middle of nowhere. And so I find that really interesting. It's just like an alien environment, which I'm really happy to dip into. And she's really great on kind of men. She writes men beautifully, all their kind of like petty rages and frustrations. She's brilliant on that. And then the other writer I'd kind of highlight would be a British writer called Erin Kelly. I don't know why I keep saying that, because you're both British, but somehow I feel like I'm talking to,
Our audience is from all over, so that's really good to highlight.
You're global, Paddy.
Right, okay. So Erin, British writer, and what she does is, her structures are really unusual. She's not desperately interested, well, not always interested in a corpse at the beginning. It's often about the journey towards that corpse. And what I love about her books is that there's tons of resentment, bitterness, jealousy, kind of obsession in them, which is, those are the kind of those extreme emotions we love reading about. And they're familiar settings, so British settings, but kind of, with little traces of Britishness. So there's the snobbery and the class divide and stuff like that. But really unusual, again, really, well, in her case, really unusual structures. A murder, the death may not occur even until the end of the book, but it's absolutely a crime novel. Definitely a psychological thriller. So they're great.
Do you think you bring some of those elements into your crime writing, the elements that you love in other people's writing? Definitely
not. I read those books and I admire them hugely, but I wouldn't say I'm a kind of trailblazer. I'm kind of, what I'm trying to do is write, I suppose, kind of conspiracy thrillers. So books like that would take a nod from something like Homeland, the first season of Homeland, or the Bourne films, or even kind of Lee Child. He's a god, I'm not a trailblazer, but what I try and do is write books where traditionally have at the heart some kind of super macho guy with a real sort of amazing physical skill set, and my protagonist does not have that physical skill set. I mean, he's just a guy. So he's a guy who resolves situations that you'd normally resolve in those books with fists, and he resolves them with his brain. So that's maybe the newish thing I'm bringing to them. But I don't pretend to be I'm not doing anything particularly clever. Except one thing I do that's quite clever. The sort of clever is the settings. So I'm really interested in those kind of exotic settings. So this one is partially set in Iraq. So I'm trying to bring that very alien setting to a book. But yeah, that's I guess what the little thing I have in common with Jane Harper. But
we were going to ask you about that, because even just the cover for the book is so exciting, and you can see get a sense of the energy that is in the story. And do you find that the setting really influences the story? Is that where you get your ideas, or have you very much plotted out the twists and turns beforehand, and then the setting just sort of lends itself to the story you had?
The setting came first because I had a friend who around here in Devon who has worked for years in Iraq, working on one of these on an oil camp, just like the one in the book. And his job was to remove land mines from the desert. So he's got kind of super macho, massively stressful job. And the more he talked about his work, the more I thought, wow, that would just be a really great setting for a book. So the setting came first, and then I kind of, if you heard the phrase, so you're either a plotter or a pantser.
Yes.
Not the pantser, and never again. So that book just took me ages, and then obviously it went to edits. I had 2 editors on it, and they just kind of said, you just need to retrofit something, and that's just utterly, it's so painful. And I'm not saying that if you kind of plot it, you remove the hell of retrofitting kind of elements like that, but you're a lot less likely to have to do it. So from now on, basically, I'm converted. It was like a kind of bolt of lightning out the sky striking my head. Never, ever again. So now I outline. So the book I'm working on at the moment is outlined.
And and with your recent release, you said it's an Audible original. So how does that work in terms of, is that completely contrasted to the normal route of publishing? Is it a very different way of doing it? Like, do you have the same editors? How does that all work?
It's exactly the same. So basically, when I signed the contract, my agent said it's going to be exactly the same. Audible become your principal publisher and your editor, and it stays with. So Audible have exclusive rights to it for a year, and then it's offered to more traditional publishers. So the editor worked with me, and I was kind of acutely aware, thinking, what do I need to do? Do I need to think more in terms of the audio, and do I need to cut back on characters? And actually, there was only one thing in it that was kind of faintly audio kind of sensitive, which was a sort of flashback, which the editor felt needed to be a little bit clearer. But then they got this actor, all their narrators are brilliant, and this actor Joe Jameson is fantastic, and he tackles. So there's lots of kind of Brits in it, and so they have to be distinguished. And there's a little Iraqi boy, and there's a Chinese kind of woman, and there's a French doctor, and I kind of thought, God, this is going to be a nightmare. So if it was me doing the accents, the French guy would sound like a character out of Hello, Hello, and it would just be, that's one not for the international audience. The Brits will get that, but it was, you know, he was so good at, so he's one guy distinguishing between all the accents. So I would say that there's no difference in writing for Audible, and it's you don't have to adjust. I mean, there are books that are way more complicated than mine. Harry Potter, for instance, which is narrated by I think it's narrated by Stephen Fry, and he manages it. So so no difference at all.
Wow. And what was that journey? What was your journey into publishing like, both in terms of the books and then working with Audible? You know, what's your experience been?
So I got my first book contract through Twitter, actually. So Twitter works, definitely works in some ways, because at that stage it was, I just noticed you'd notice these kind of personalities on Twitter, and there was a very kind of strong personality, an independent publisher based in the States. Actually, he's a British guy based in the States, and he had kind of a very strong voice, a very, very strong opinions. And I got in touch with him, and he said, "I've actually read your book already." Sorry, I've missed a bit. I self-published my first book.
Oh, wow.
And he then took it on and published it, and then published the second one, and then kind of a couple of years later, I got my agent with this book, and kind of here we are now. But yes, I've had a slightly unusual route. But then I think most writers, no one goes. I mean, there are very few who just kind of drop straight into a kind of, brilliant traditional route.
Yeah, and actually that's a really interesting thing to actually talk to everybody about. I think a lot of people will be intrigued by this idea of self-publishing first and then being able to be picked up by a publisher. I think sometimes people misinterpret that as once you've self-published, you could never get a publisher. So this is actually a really great story to put people's mind at ease in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the self-publishing kind of aspect of it is long gone in a way. I mean, if you looked at my profile on Amazon, you'd find that the self-published book, the first self-published book, this dreadful cover and stuff. And I wish I probably could remove it if I put my mind to it. But yeah, no, it is. I think it's possibly it's a less likely route now, because self-publishing, you'd need to do really well to kind of to get a kind of profile. But it's absolutely. I don't think there's any particular route. Yeah.
So what would your advice be then to anybody that would like to get into writing but hasn't quite taken that leap and might be thinking that it's too hard, or they have no idea if they're any good, of having gone on that journey yourself?
Oh God, I mean, going right back to the beginning, I would say courses. So I mean, I was, when I first started out, I thought of myself as this kind of literary writer, sadly, and so I do kind of courses. And in the UK, there are things called the Arvin Foundation, which is just brilliant. So that's a residential week. But also there are kind of specifically crime and thriller. There's one I think there's still one at City University, and there are online courses. There's one run by, that might actually be at City, run by this brilliant writer, Caroline Green. So there are plenty. You know her?
We interviewed her this week. Yeah, she's wonderful.
Yeah. So her course is brilliant, and that's those courses are as much about learning the craft as they are about getting to know the community, and this would feed into the second bit. I would say that the crime community, is about as lovely and nurturing and welcoming as any, and you will, obviously in a good year you'll have kind of Harrogate Festival and Lime Crime and stuff, and what they do is that when you get there you realise that it's very warm and welcoming, and you're very likely to kind of bump into someone who's at the peak of their career, and the chances are they will be more than happy to help you. It's a really, get to know them, go on Twitter, follow your heroes, interact with them, read their books, I mean, and that's the other thing, read,
Yeah. And why do you think we keep hearing this, that the crime community is so sort of nurturing? What do you think? It's not necessarily what you might think for a community of people that are kind of plotting all these dark twists and turns. So what do you think it is that makes them so welcoming?
God, I don't know. I mean, it's a really good point, isn't it? So basically, these are the people who spend their entire life trying to think of really ingenious ways of murdering people and then just smoking their bodies so they don't get caught. So in what way are they nice? I think they've got a kind of great... I think because they write crime, they're quite empathetic people. So they are not only trying to, I mean, a really good crime book will empathise with the murderer. They'll understand what motivated someone to kill. They're empathising with everyone in the novel, you know, including the victim. And I think that might be, I think they're good at stepping into other people's shoes, possibly. I can't pinpoint it. It's really weird though, but you know, and they're not jealous at all either. God, I'm really bigging them up now, but they're a lovely bunch. Yeah, I think it's the empathy thing. It's the ability to kind of see life from all angles that really that makes them a different bunch.
I think that really does seem to make sense though. Actually, I don't think I've ever heard anybody explain it in such an incredible way. And actually, you yourself have set up a festival, Lime Crime, which obviously is now this year gone online. But could you tell us a bit about that and how that all started up? And obviously, the community is such a huge part. So you obviously already had a lot of contacts and things. It'd be really great to hear about your journey to setting that up.
Well, I ran I co-ran a little kind of literary festival around here. It was definitely literary, and it wasn't, you know, it was really great. We had great speakers and stuff like that, but it was just, I kind of realised that every time we had a crime writer on, I kind of thought, wow, this is what I want to listen to. And you know, when you go to something like Harrogate, it's just such a brilliant experience. I mean, there are obviously the panels, but there also is the kind of social aspect, if I think you know what I mean, just, you know, a little bit of that and chatting to the other writers and stuff. And I thought, if I could replicate that by the sea where we live, I thought I was onto a real winner, because I kind of thought, what would be better than, you know, crime and seagulls and ice creams and stuff like that. And so the nearest town to us is Lyme Regis, and there's a really great little theatre there right on the seafront. And so I kind of got in contact with some crime buddies, and it was a unanimous yes, pretty much, from absolutely everyone. And so I'm not, you know, because of this lack of competitive stuff, you know, the supporting stuff, there's no way I could go into competition with Harrogate or Crime Fest or any of the other brilliant festivals. So yeah, I'm not trying to go into competition with them. I'm just kind of seeing there's a gap in the calendar at that time of year, and you know, wouldn't it be lovely to kind of assemble the crime community by the sea in beautiful Dorset, you know, in June? And I think the response has been brilliant. So
it sounds heavenly. And obviously this year with we won't say its name going on, but how can crime fans get involved in this online?
So basically, well done for not naming it. I don't name it anymore either. We've gone online basically. Thanks to Lauren, we're going to call it was it Online Crime?
Online Crime.
Yeah, that's copyright you. And basically, I haven't taken the program that we're going to run and just kind of replicated it online. I've spoken to a few writers who've got books out right here and now, so we're kind of being a little bit more responsive to the publishing kind of schedule, which has obviously kind of changed a bit. And we're just doing what we can. I'm going to run some kind of events myself from this very spot, and also you know, some other people are going to host kind of Zoom interviews and panels and stuff. So it's going to be a little bit rough and ready. I mean, Hay Festival's got this amazingly polished kind of online thing. It's not going to be that. It's going to be much more of a kind of, it's just going to be a sort of ad hoc, rough and ready, but hopefully, you know, kind of glorious online celebration of crime, minus the bar.
Sounds fantastic. It sounds brilliant. I think that's what people want as well when you're stuck at home. You don't, you know, even if it's a bit rough and ready, that's all you want to hear about is from the authors and about their books. I think it's
yeah. Hopefully that's what we'll do. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, we'll share all the links to it, and we'll certainly be tuning in as well, because I can't think of anything better than a crime festival escape this next few weeks.
Brilliant. Thank you.
And so if you could tell everybody where they can find you to get in touch with you and where they could buy your books, that would be wonderful. Yeah,
brilliant. So I'm on Twitter. So I've got such a kind of, no one shares my name, so it's really easy. So I'm on Twitter at Paddy Magrane, and also on Facebook at the same one, same name. And also Lime Crime was annoyingly taken already. So it's Crime Lime, LYME on Twitter. And you can buy Red Desert on on Amazon at Audible. So Red Desert by Paddy Magrane.
Brilliant.
And please do it and rate it too.
Yeah. Oh, we're big raters. Don't worry. We can't wait to talk into that.
All about rating.
Yes. Fantastic. Thank you so much for making time to talk to us. It's been
you so
great.
much. Yeah.